coastal grizzly stalked a hunter for 3 days across interior Alaska, then ambushed him over a fresh moose kill, early November 2003. The ridge system, 12 miles north of Paxton, Alaska. Raymond Garrett, 53, had hunted this drainage every season for 18 years. He carried a Mossberg 590 pump shotgun, a satellite phone, and freeze-dried rations for 5 days. Garrett hiked in 4 miles on November 6th and set camp below the tree line at 3,200 feet elevation. Temperatures held near 18 degrees, with light snow accumulating 3 to 4 inches overnight. The first 2 days produced no game. On the third morning, he found claw marks on a birch trunk 7.5 feet above ground. The exposed wood showed no oxidation. Downslope, he located scat measuring 6 inches across, still steaming in cold air. The size indicated coastal brown bears. Garrett noted it, but continued hunting. Coastal grizzlies rarely ranged this far inland in November. That evening, Garrett reviewed trail camera footage. At 3:17 a.m., infrared showed an animal standing upright near the camera. The estimated height was 9.5 feet. The bear had used the same trail Garrett traveled that afternoon. Garrett loaded copper-jacketed slugs rated for dangerous game. Each weighed 1 1/8 ounces. He carried 8 rounds. By noon on November 9th, Garrett shot a bull moose in a shallow ravine. The animal dropped after 1 lung shot at 80 yards. Garrett began field dressing, working both hands inside the chest cavity. A compressive crunch sounded from upslope. The grizzly stood 28 yards away at the ridgeline. It descended at a walk, moving directly toward Garrett. Ears forward, head low. No vocalization. Garrett reached for the shotgun and racked the pump. The bear charged. Garrett fired from standing. First slug struck center mass, high chest. The bear continued. Second shot, 4 inches left of the first. The bear closed to 10 yards. The third shot entered the chest at an upward angle. Blood spread across the fur in 3 blooms. Velocity unchanged. The bear covered the final 8 feet in under 1 second. The right forepaw struck Garrett's chest with 800 to 1,000 pounds of force. 4 ribs fractured. The 4th rib punctured his left lung. Garrett fell backward onto the snow and frozen ground. The shotgun left his hands. The bear's jaws closed over his left upper arm, canines severing the radial nerve. Garrett's vision narrowed to a 30-degree tunnel. His right hand found the shotgun stock. He dragged it across his torso and forced the muzzle upward between the bear's jaws. His thumb found the trigger. The slug traveled through the soft palate into the brain. The bear went rigid, then collapsed onto Garrett's chest. Total weight exceeded 720 pounds. Garrett could not draw breath. He pushed against the bear's shoulder with his right arm. No movement. He repositioned, flexed his knees, and pushed while rolling left. The body shifted 4 inches. He repeated this 6 times over 3 minutes until he extracted himself. His left arm hung useless. Arterial blood pulsed from the wounds. Garrett looped his belt around the upper arm as a tourniquet, cinching it with his teeth and right hand. He called emergency services at 1:47 p.m. and provided coordinates. The helicopter landed at 3:20 p.m. The medic noted altered mental status, shallow breathing at 26 breaths per minute, and a pulse at 118. Medical findings and aftermath. Garrett arrived with Class 3 hemorrhagic shock and a collapsed lung. Surgeons inserted a chest tube, stabilized 4 ribs with titanium plates, and repaired the brachial artery. The radial nerve damage was irreversible. 3 additional operations addressed infection over 11 weeks. Permanent loss of function occurred in the left hand and forearm. Garrett retained 40% grip strength and could not fully extend his fingers or rotate his wrist. Surgeons classified it as permanent partial disability. Garrett avoided solo hunts for 2 seasons. He returned in November 2006 with his brother-in-law, carrying a modified shotgun with a recoil brace and a higher capacity magazine loaded with heavier slugs. Incident analysis. Garrett misread the bear's behavior as opportunistic rather than predatory. Coastal grizzlies occasionally range inland in late fall, but tracking humans over 72 hours suggests the animal identified Garrett as competition or a food source. The shotgun performed as designed. All 3 slugs struck vital zones, but momentum allowed the bear to complete its charge. Only the contact distance shot into the mouth caused immediate incapacitation. The satellite phone enabled survival. Without immediate extraction, Garrett would have died from blood loss or hypothermia within 4 hours. Practical takeaway. In grizzly country, fresh signs of a large predator require immediate withdrawal and reporting, not continued hunting. Before we jump to the next story, if you're watching on TV, you can point your phone at the code in the corner to subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next incident report. The next case begins in a few seconds. A wildfire-displaced grizzly ambushed 2 elk hunters on a narrow ridge in southeastern British Columbia. One man fell 20 feet onto a rock. The other fired 3 slugs at contact distance. Mid-September 2003. The Kootenay region is 12 miles northeast of Cranbrook, British Columbia. Curtis Leland, 42, and Mason Trigg, 39, had hunted elk in this drainage for 3 consecutive days. Both men carried Remington 870 pump shotguns and shared a satellite phone. Leland and Trigg hiked in from a Forest Service road on September 14th, establishing camp at 4,100 feet elevation. Daytime temperatures reached 62 Fahrenheit degrees, with clear skies. Wildfires in northwestern Montana had burned over 180,000 acres that summer, altering migration corridors and pushing wildlife into unfamiliar ranges. On the morning of September 17th, Leland shot a bull elk at 110 yards. The animal dropped after a single lung shot. Both men field-dressed the carcass and quartered it for transport. They loaded 1 hindquarter into each pack, approximately 85 pounds per load, and began the return trip. The route followed a ridgeline with moderate exposure on the south side. The drop measured between 18 and 25 feet to a slope covered in talus and scattered deadfall. Leland walked point. Trigg followed at 12 feet. Trigg stopped. The forest had gone silent. No bird calls, no wind movement. He turned toward the downslope side. Rustling sounded from a thicket 40 yards below the trail. Leland unslung his shotgun and loaded 3-inch Brennecke slugs. Trigg moved upslope to higher ground, seeking visibility. His shotgun remained strapped to his pack. The grizzly emerged at a full run from 30 yards. The bear angled upslope toward Trigg, who stood 4 feet above the trail on a granite outcrop. Trigg stepped backward. His right boot struck loose scree. The bear closed to 15 feet and launched. The impact struck Trigg center mass. Both bodies went over the edge. Trigg landed on his left side against an angled rock face. His left femur was fractured mid-shaft on contact. The bear landed 3 feet downslope, regained footing, and turned uphill. Leland shouldered the shotgun from 25 yards and fired. The slug struck the bear's left shoulder. The bear pivoted toward Leland and charged upslope. Leland cycled the action and fired again. The slug entered the right side of the neck, severing the carotid artery. Blood sprayed across rock and vegetation. The bear continued uphill. Distance closed to 10 feet. Leland fired the 3rd round. The slug entered the chest cavity and traveled through both lungs before fragmenting against the spine. The bear's front legs collapsed. Final distance from Leland, 4.5 feet. Leland reloaded and descended to Trigg's position. Trigg remained conscious but displayed rapid, shallow breathing. His left thigh showed abnormal angulation 6 inches above the knee. Leland activated the satellite phone at 11:43 a.m. and provided coordinates. Leland removed both belts, placed them alongside the injured leg, and secured them with paracord as a splint. He covered Trigg with emergency blankets and maintained visual contact with the bear carcass. The helicopter landed at 12:17 p.m. Flight medics immobilized Trigg's leg and administered intravenous fentanyl. Airlift occurred at 12:31 p.m. Provincial wildlife officers retrieved the bear that afternoon. The animal weighed 587 pounds. A yellow ear tag identified it as part of a Montana conservation study from 2001. Officers attributed the encounter to territorial displacement from summer wildfires and a pre-hibernation feeding drive. The elk carcass, 340 yards away, likely drew the bear into the drainage. Medical findings and aftermath. Trigg underwent surgery within 4 hours. Orthopedic surgeons reduced the fracture and installed a titanium intramedullary rod with screws. Post-operative imaging confirmed proper alignment. Trigg remained hospitalized for 6 days. Physical therapy continued for 11 months. Trigg regained full weight-bearing capability, but experienced chronic pain during weather changes and sustained exertion. He retained a visible limp and reduced range of motion in the left hip. Trigg discontinued elk hunting after 2003 and avoided steep terrain. Leland reported no sleep disturbance, but altered his field dressing protocol to include constant 360-degree observation and repositioned camps to prioritize visibility over proximity to water. Incident analysis. Leland and Trigg field dressed the elk without establishing overwatch or clearing the surrounding area. The bear likely tracked the scent plume from over half a mile and approached from terrain that offered concealment to within 30 yards. Trigg's decision to move upslope for visibility placed him on unstable footing with no escape route. When the bear charged, retreat onto loose scree caused his fall. Leland's shotgun and ammunition performed effectively. The third shot caused immediate incapacitation, but only after the bear had covered 20 yards and neutralized one target. Earlier firearm deployment or positioning that maintained separation between hunters may have prevented Trigg's fall. The satellite phone enabled evacuation within 34 minutes of injury. Without it, Trigg would have faced an overland carry of more than 12 miles, likely resulting in shock or fat embolism from the untreated fracture. Practical takeaway. When processing large game in bear country, one person should maintain armed overwatch from elevated terrain with clear sight lines, while the other works on the carcass. A partially blind grizzly stalked a bow hunter's camp for 3 nights in northwestern Montana. On the 4th night, it tore through his tent at 3:17 a.m. The hunter fired twice at contact distance. Late October 1991. The Flathead National Forest, northwest Montana. Elmer Ridge, 39, had bow hunted this drainage for 7 consecutive seasons. He carried a compound bow, a Remington 870 shotgun, and a thermal imaging camera purchased 2 weeks prior. Ridge established camp on October 22nd at 4,600 feet elevation in mixed lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. Nighttime temperatures dropped to 28 Fahrenheit degrees. He positioned a tree stand along a game trail 140 yards from his tent and secured food in a bear-proof container. The first 3 days produced no shot opportunities. Ridge remained in the stand from dawn until dusk, observing elk sign, but no animals within effective bow range. On the morning of October 26th, Ridge climbed to his tree stand and noticed the platform had rotated approximately 40 degrees from its original orientation. The mounting straps showed no loosening or slippage. The stand had turned on the trunk, while the straps remained tight. That evening, Ridge returned to camp and found his pack opened and contents scattered across the ground. A small cooler had been overturned, but nothing was missing. Ridge restored order, moved all food items into the bear container, and loaded his shotgun with 1-ounce slugs before sleeping. On October 27th, Ridge deployed his thermal camera at the camp perimeter before dark. He reviewed the footage at 9:30 p.m. A large heat signature appeared at the edge of detection range, approximately 60 yards from the tent. Without approaching directly. Movement pattern and size indicated grizzly bear. Ridge considered evacuation, but elected to remain one additional night with heightened precautions. He loaded the shotgun with heavy, copper-jacketed slugs and positioned it inside the tent within arm's reach. He placed a high-intensity flashlight beside his sleeping bag. The forest went silent after dark. No owl calls, no small mammal movement in the underbrush. At 3:17 a.m., canvas tore 6 inches from Ridge's head. Ridge opened his eyes. A massive form filled the opening where the tent wall had been. Moonlight illuminated the silhouette of a grizzly's head and shoulders. The bear's head hung low in a forward posture. No vocalization. Ridge's right hand closed on the shotgun grip. He brought the muzzle up from a prone position and fired. The slug struck the bear's lower jaw at a range of approximately 4 feet. Bone and tissue separated. The bear recoiled backward, emitting a choked exhalation. Ridge cycled the pump action while still lying on his back. The bear reared upright, exposing its head and upper chest. Ridge fired the second round. The slug entered the left eye socket and traveled upward through the frontal lobe into the brainstem. The bear went rigid and collapsed forward. The upper body fell across the tent floor. The hindquarters remained outside. Estimated weight, 340 pounds. Ridge remained motionless inside the collapsed tent for approximately 20 minutes. He extracted himself at first light, activated his emergency beacon at 6:02 a.m., and sat 15 feet from the carcass with the reloaded shotgun across his knees. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks officers arrived by vehicle at 8:45 a.m. They documented the scene and transported the carcass for necropsy. Medical findings and aftermath. Ridge required no medical treatment. He exhibited no visible injuries. Officers noted flat affect and delayed verbal responses consistent with an acute stress reaction. Necropsy revealed a female grizzly approximately 19 years old with advanced bilateral cataracts. The right eye showed complete opacity. The left eye retained partial central vision, estimated at less than 20% normal acuity. Body conditions scored as thin but not emaciated. No signs of starvation or systemic disease. Stomach contents included grass, roots, and small amounts of carrion. Ridge discontinued solo hunts after October 1991. He returned to the same drainage in subsequent seasons, but hunted exclusively with partners. He reported no sleep disturbance or avoidance of wilderness areas, but described persistent awareness of the camp perimeter and refused to sleep in tents without rigid walled shelters nearby. Incident analysis. The bear's impaired vision prevented effective hunting and foraging. As winter approached, opportunistic scavenging became essential for survival. Investigated over multiple nights, learning the layout before committing to an entry. Ridge's decision to deploy thermal imaging on October 27th provided advance warning of the bear's presence and behavioral pattern. This allowed him to position defensive tools within immediate reach rather than storing them outside the tent or in a pack. The tent placement offered no natural barriers or escape routes. Ridge slept in a fabric enclosure with limited visibility and no hardened structure between himself and the entry point. The shotgun's placement inside the tent enabled immediate deployment from a prone position. The first shot disrupted the bear's attack posture. The second shot delivered instantaneous incapacitation before the bear could re-engage. Practical takeaway. In grizzly country, thermal cameras or trail cameras provide critical early warning of predator activity near camp, allowing hunters to adjust defensive positioning or evacuate before an encounter occurs. A tracker became disoriented during a snowstorm in the Wyoming backcountry and spent 2 nights alone, On the second night, something entered his shelter. He fired 4 rounds in darkness and survived with severe lacerations. Early September 1978, the Wind River Range, 18 miles southeast of Pinedale, Wyoming. Caleb Dern, 33, had tracked a bull elk into high-elevation timber at 9,200 feet. He carried a Winchester 1300 pump shotgun, a compass, and minimal overnight gear. Dern entered the backcountry on September 8th under clear skies. He located elk sign on the morning of September 10th and followed fresh tracks northeast into dense lodgepole pine forest. By early afternoon, cloud cover descended and snow began falling. Wind speed increased to approximately 30 miles per hour, with visibility dropping below 100 yards. Dern attempted to retrace his route using compass bearings, but could not locate landmarks. After passing the same downed timber twice, he recognized disorientation. At 4:30 p.m., Dern stopped on a moderate slope and constructed a lean-to shelter using deadfall branches and an emergency space blanket. He built a small fire and maintained it overnight. Snow accumulated 8 inches. Temperature dropped to an estimated 22 Fahrenheit degrees. At first light on September 11th, the storm had obscured all tracks. Dern traveled southeast, breaking branches at eye level to mark his path. After 4 hours, the forest composition changed to larger diameter trees with wider spacing. Terrain became unfamiliar. As daylight faded, Dern stopped beneath a mature ponderosa pine and constructed a second shelter. He arranged the space blanket as a lean-to roof supported by branches. He built a fire 6 feet from the opening and loaded his shotgun with rifled slugs. Shortly after midnight, Dern woke to rhythmic breathing outside the shelter perimeter. The sound originated from beyond firelight range, estimated at 15 feet. The breathing pattern suggested a large animal moving in a slow arc around the campsite. Duration, approximately 3 minutes. The sound stopped. Branches cracked directly overhead. A heavy impact struck the center of the lean-to roof. The space blanket collapsed inward. Dern rolled right and exited the shelter. A large, dark shape moved near the collapsed structure. Dern raised the shotgun from a kneeling position and fired. Muzzle flash illuminated fur and movement, but no clear detail. Dern cycled the action and fired again. The shape moved toward him. A low vocalization sounded from approximately 8 feet. Dern fired a third time while backing toward the tree trunk. Claws raked across his left shoulder from behind and above. 4 parallel lacerations opened through his jacket and shirt. Dern fell forward onto his knees and fired the 4th round at an upward angle. A loud exhalation followed by heavy movement through underbrush indicated retreat. Dern remained kneeling with the shotgun raised. He reloaded 4 rounds with trembling hands. At dawn, Dern examined the area. Blood marked the snow in multiple locations within 12 feet of the collapsed shelter. Claw marks scored the ponderosa trunk at approximately 8.5 feet above ground. The marks measured 4 parallel grooves, each 1.5 inches deep, spaced 2 inches apart. Dern activated his emergency beacon at 6:20 a.m. He packed essential gear and began moving downslope southwest. His left shoulder showed reduced range of motion and continuous bleeding. Over the next 48 hours, Dern traveled an estimated 7 miles. He consumed minimal food and water. Core temperature dropped. Mental status deteriorated to include visual disturbances and delayed environmental response. On September 13th at 2 p.m., Dern entered a clearing and encountered a county search and rescue team responding to his beacon. Team members noted altered consciousness, slurred speech, and visible blood saturation on his upper torso. Medical findings and aftermath. Dern arrived at the regional hospital with moderate hypothermia and 4 deep lacerations across the left shoulder and upper back. Surgeons debrided the wounds and repaired damaged trapezius muscle and torn ligaments. No arterial involvement. He received intravenous antibiotics and fluids. Hospital stay, 6 days. Physical therapy continued for 8 weeks. Dern regained approximately 85% range of motion in the left shoulder, but experienced chronic pain during overhead movements and cold weather. Wyoming Game and Fish investigated the incident. Field officers located the campsite and documented claw marks and blood evidence. Laboratory analysis identified the blood as consistent with black bear. Officers attributed the encounter to a defensive response near a food cache or den site. Dern discontinued solo backcountry hunts after 1978. He restricted activity to day trips within 3 miles of vehicle access and avoided overnight camps above 8,000 feet elevation. Incident analysis. Dern became disoriented during deteriorating weather, without GPS or backup navigation. His decision to shelter in place rather than continue movement in low visibility likely prevented fatal hypothermia or falls. The lean-to offered minimal structural protection and no early warning system for approaching animals. Dern's position inside the collapsed shelter prevented immediate firearm deployment. 4 shotgun rounds fired at contact distance in darkness with no visible target resulted in 1 probable hit. Muzzle flash provided insufficient illumination for target identification or shot placement. The emergency beacon enabled rescue after 48 hours. Without it, Dern would likely have succumbed to hypothermia or infection within 72 hours of the attack. Practical takeaway. In wilderness hunts above treeline, carry redundant navigation tools and avoid solo overnight camps during unsettled weather when disorientation risk increases significantly. A hunting guide and 3 clients camped half a mile from a moose gut pile in the Idaho backcountry. On the 3rd night, a black bear entered a tent at midnight. The guide fired twice at contact distance. October 1984. The Bitter Root Range, northeast Idaho. Thomas Hargrove, 47, guided 3 hunters in their 20s on a white-tailed deer hunt. The group camped near a tributary stream at 5,400 feet. Hargrove carried an Ithaca 37 pump shotgun loaded with rifled slugs. Hargrove and his clients established camp on October 18th in a mixed conifer forest with moderate undergrowth. Daytime temperatures reached 52 Fahrenheit degrees. The camp location sat 480 yards from an abandoned logging staging area where previous hunting parties had discarded moose entrails after field dressing. Hargrove was unaware of the gut pile's proximity. The group consisted of Hargrove and 3 hunters: William Crane, 23, Jeffrey Moss, 26, and Marcus Dell, 28. Each client carried a rifle. Hargrove supervised all field dressing and meat handling procedures. Over 2 days, the group harvested 2 white-tailed bucks. Hargrove demonstrated proper gutting technique and supervised the suspension of clean quarters between trees 40 yards from camp. All food items were stored in bear-resistant containers, except personal snacks retained by individual hunters. On the evening of October 20th, a cold front moved through the region. The temperature dropped to an estimated 34 Fahrenheit degrees by 10 p.m. The group retired to their tents. Hargrove occupied a solo tent. Crane slept alone in a second tent. Moss and Dell shared a third. At approximately 11:50 p.m., a scream erupted from Crane's tent. Hargrove exited his tent in thermal underwear and wool socks. He carried the Ithaca shotgun. Moonlight illuminated the camp clearing. Crane's tent wall bulged outward in an irregular pattern. A low vocalization sounded from inside the tent. Crane screamed again. Hargrove approached to within 15 feet and called out verbal commands. No response. He fired 1 round into the air above the tent. The tent wall ripped open along a 12-foot seam. A black bear emerged through the opening. The animal stood on all 4 legs, facing Hargrove. Estimated weight, 420 pounds. The bear's muzzle showed moisture. It rose to a bipedal stance, reaching approximately 6.5 feet in height. Hargrove remained stationary. The bear dropped to all fours and accelerated toward him. Hargrove shouldered the shotgun and fired from a standing position at approximately 12 feet. The slug struck the bear's upper chest, penetrating the thoracic cavity. The bear's front legs collapsed. Forward momentum carried the body an additional 6 feet before it stopped. Final distance from Hargrove, 4 feet. The bear exhibited labored respiration and involuntary muscle contractions for approximately 30 seconds, then ceased movement. Hargrove maintained aim until all motion stopped. Hargrove entered Crane's tent. Crane sat against the rear wall, uninjured but exhibiting rapid breathing and dilated pupils. A partially opened candy bar wrapper lay inside Crane's sleeping bag. The bear had torn through the tent wall at the location closest to the food item. Moss and Dell emerged from their tent. All 4 men remained awake near a fire until dawn. At first light, Hargrove examined the bear carcass and noted foam residue around the mouth and nostrils, suggesting possible illness or injury. Idaho Fish and Game officers arrived by vehicle at the trailhead on October 21st and hiked to the campsite. They documented the scene, retrieved the carcass, and located the moose gut pile 480 yards northwest. Officers noted multiple bear tracks in the area. Medical findings and aftermath. Crane required no medical treatment. He exhibited symptoms consistent with acute stress reaction, but no physical injuries. Hargrove sustained no injuries. Necropsy revealed a male black bear, estimated at 12 years old, with body condition scored as average. No evidence of rabies. Stomach contents included vegetation, insects, and moose tissue. Officers attributed the tent entry to food conditioning from repeated exposure to improperly stored human food and accessible gut piles near hunting camps. Hargrove discontinued use of the Ithaca shotgun after the incident due to a cracked forend that occurred during the second shot. The 3 clients purchased a Remington 870 shotgun as a replacement. Hargrove retained the firearm but did not use it in the field. Hargrove continued guiding hunts for 15 additional years, but implemented mandatory food storage protocols and avoided camping within 1 mile of known processing sites or gut disposal areas. Crane, Moss, and Dell discontinued all bear country hunting after 1984. Incident analysis. The camp's proximity to the moose gut pile created a high-density food attractant that drew bears into the immediate area. Hargrove's pre-trip reconnaissance did not include inspection for previous hunter activity or waste disposal sites. Crane's decision to retain food inside his sleeping area violated established bear safety protocols and created a direct scent trail into the tent. The bear entered through the wall rather than the zippered door, suggesting focused approach toward the specific food location. Hargrove's warning shot failed to deter the bear, indicating either habituation to human presence or an advanced feeding drive that overrode normal flight response. The second shot, from 12 feet, delivered immediate incapacitation through thoracic trauma. Hargrove's decision to engage the bear rather than retreat into his own tent prevented potential additional tent entries and reduced risk to all 4 occupants. Practical takeaway. Before establishing camp in bear country, conduct a half-mile perimeter check for gut piles, food waste, or previous hunter activity that may attract predators into your sleeping area. A deer hunter spent 5 days in Washington's temperate rainforest during record rainfall. Something stalked his camp each night, circling at a consistent distance. On the 5th night, it approached his empty tent. October 2021, the Olympic National Forest, Northwest Washington. Harold Bennington, 62, hunted black-tailed deer in old-growth forest at 2,800 feet elevation. He carried a Remington 870 shotgun, a Glock 20 sidearm, and thermal optics for night observation. Bennington established base camp on October 12th in a clearing surrounded by Douglas fir and western hemlock. Record rainfall had turned access roads to mud and raised stream levels above normal flow. Most hunters evacuated the area. Bennington remained, hunting alone. He employed a methodical pattern: 10 steps forward, 3 minutes of stationary observation. On the morning of October 16th, Bennington paused beneath a Douglas fir and detected movement 80 yards ahead. Through binoculars, he observed a large, dark shape between 2 hemlocks. The form remained motionless. Size and posture suggested black bear standing upright against a tree trunk. Bennington called out verbal warnings. No response. The shape did not move. Bennington marked the GPS coordinates and continued hunting, maintaining visual contact with his back trail. He returned to camp at approximately 4:30 p.m. His firewood stack had been scattered across the clearing. A waterproof gear bag lay open beside the fire pit with contents disturbed. Bennington drew his sidearm and inspected the perimeter. A box of shotgun shells and a high-intensity flashlight were missing. His satellite phone, cash, and cooking equipment remained untouched. Bennington loaded his shotgun and positioned it inside the tent. Sleep occurred in intervals of 20 to 30 minutes. After 2 a.m., footsteps circulated around the camp perimeter at an estimated distance of 25 yards. Bennington deployed a thermal monocular but detected no definitive heat signature. The footsteps maintained consistent distance for approximately 8 minutes, then ceased. At dawn on October 17th, Bennington constructed a perimeter alarm using paracord and aluminum cans positioned at likely approach routes based on terrain features and previous disturbance patterns. He resumed hunting but found fresh tracks on the trail matching large bear paws with an estimated stride length of 38 inches. The tracks followed his own boot prints from earlier that morning. Bennington returned to camp at dusk and found the western perimeter alarm triggered. One can had been displaced, and the cord coiled beside it rather than scattered. He conducted a sweep with the shotgun raised. A single track pressed into moss showed a large bear paw print approximately 9 inches long. That evening, Bennington packed essential gear and positioned himself 20 yards from his tent with clear sight lines to all approaches. He remained awake. Shortly before midnight, movement appeared at the eastern edge of the clearing. Through thermal optics, Bennington observed a large heat signature moving toward the tent at ground level. The animal alternated between quadrupedal movement and brief pauses in an upright position. It approached the tent without deviation. At the tent entrance, the animal stopped and began manipulating the structure. Stakes were pulled from the ground. The rain fly collapsed. Bennington stood and announced his presence while shouldering the shotgun. The animal froze for approximately 2 seconds, then moved into the forest at high speed. Bennington pursued for 15 yards before stopping. The thermal signature disappeared beyond detection range. At first light on October 18th, Bennington packed remaining gear and hiked 7 miles to the trailhead. He reported the incidents to the ranger station. The ranger informed him that 2 hikers had been reported missing from the same drainage on October 14th. Search teams located the hikers' bodies in a ravine 5 miles from Bennington's camp on October 25th. Preliminary findings indicated probable bear attack based on trauma patterns and tissue damage. The bodies showed post-mortem animal feeding consistent with black bear scavenging behavior.
Medical findings and aftermath. Bennington sustained no injuries. He reported no sleep disturbance following the incident, but exhibited heightened vigilance during subsequent wilderness activities. Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife investigated the area and documented bear sign, including tracks, scat, and claw marks on trees within 200 yards of Bennington's camp. Officers attributed the camp disturbances to a food-conditioned black bear exhibiting bold investigative behavior toward human equipment.
The missing hikers' deaths were classified as accidental falls with subsequent bear scavenging. No evidence suggested predatory behavior toward living humans. Bennington discontinued solo hunts after October 2021. He restricted camping to developed sites within visual range of ranger stations or road access and hunted exclusively with partners. Incident analysis. Bennington's camp location placed him in proximity to an active bear with learned tolerance of human presence. The animal's repeated approaches over 5 consecutive nights demonstrated progressive habituation rather than immediate predatory intent. The bear's manipulation of camp equipment indicated advanced problem-solving behavior and a lack of fear response to human scent or presence. Food conditioning from previous human contact likely contributed to boldness. Bennington's decision to position himself outside the tent with firearm ready prevented a potential tent entry while he slept. His thermal optics provided early warning and confirmed animal identity. The satellite phone enabled immediate communication with authorities and documentation of the pattern before evacuation. Practical takeaway. In areas with food-conditioned bears showing progressive approach behavior over multiple nights, immediate evacuation is safer than attempting to defend camp position, even with adequate weaponry.
If you value these true survival stories, please hit that red subscribe button right now. It helps our channel grow so we can keep sharing these vital lessons.